My crazy experience on Craigslist happened when I decided to sell my iPad. I was a bit skeptical about using Craigslist because of all the incidents I heard on the news before. My friend told me he used it frequently and nothing ever bad has happened to him. He told me only people dumb enough to meet at nighttime were usually the people who got robbed. He was pretty damn fearless for a 14-year-old. I put my iPad up for sale and emails started pouring in. Nobody seemed to match the price I offered, as they would ask for it at half the price. I left my friend's house and I decided to leave my cell phone number in the ad, as I didn't have any internet back home. I also hated my phone's email app, as it took ages just to load incoming emails. I finally got a text from a man who had no problem matching my price. He had texted me that he wanted to buy it for his son. He seemed like a real nice guy. The fact that he was a father made me feel a bit more sure to meet him. He asked me where I was located and when I was available. I was so fast to list the item on Craigslist, I didn't even think about the actual meeting part. It wasn't like I could just sell it on eBay and send it through mail. I didn't have a car and I was too scared to walk to the corner with my iPad. Knowing my luck, somebody would probably just jack me for it before I had the chance to sell it. I texted the man my address and he said he would be at the house in 30 minutes. I kept peeking out the window, nervous as I was home alone. My mom would be home in about an hour. I kept telling myself I should have waited to meet him then. But then I knew my mom would be against me selling my iPad on Craigslist, period. She couldn't know about this at all. The thoughts ran through my head. How stupid can I be to give a stranger my home address? What if he was lying? What if he is this deranged killer who targets people on Craigslist? What if he's a stalker? All the bad ideas came in my head. I kept trying to reassure myself that once he got the iPad, I would never have to see him again. I kept telling myself everything would be okay. Besides, I need the money fast anyways. That 30 minutes was the longest 30 minutes in my life. I saw a black Ford Explorer park across the street. The driver didn't get out. I could see a big shadow through the tinted window. I was watching the car for 3 minutes, almost shitting myself. Finally, a person got out the car, and it was some lady walking the opposite way. I felt relieved, but still nervous as the guy hadn't came yet. I had called him, but no answer. After a minute, I had a text from him saying he was on the way as he stopped at the bank for cash. All my doubts went away as I thought he was legit. Finally, a white Honda Accord parked in my driveway. By this time, my mom would be home in 15 minutes, so this had to be quick. The guy that got out of the car was a Caucasian guy with stubby hair, maybe about 6 feet tall. He had on almost all black beside the brown boots. He had a blank face with almost no emotion. I opened the door and told him to hold on as I had to get the iPad. I wasn't sure how to go about meeting him. I felt this awkward vibe as if I was meeting a driving instructor on a bad day. I showed him the iPad and how it worked as I explained I wanted to get enough money to buy a brand new laptop. He didn't really seem friendly. As he saw how well the product worked, he pulled a wad of cash out in all 20s, saying it was all there. I counted the money as quick as I could as he walked away with the iPad. He seemed as if he was in a hurry. After counting the money, I could see the guy was $40 below. I told him to stop. I couldn't take less than the offer price. The guy got real hot-headed when I told him to come back, almost as if he changed to a totally different person. He screamed that it was a real fair deal and that was all the cash he had. However, if I took less than what was offered, I wouldn't be able to afford what I wanted to buy. I refused taking this offer and gave him back his cash. He slapped the table and called me all types of curse words. I grabbed my iPad and ran back in the house, talking through the screen door. I tried to calm him down, but he grew even more frustrated, complaining how much effort he took to get here and all the time he wasted for me to just reject his offer. I told him if I didn't get any better offers, I would call him back. He told me he would be right back with the $40 as he slammed his car door shut. He slammed his door so hard I could feel it shake the ground. I waited about 10 minutes hoping he was a good distance away, and I told him I accidentally spilled water on my iPad just so he wouldn't bother coming back. My phone began to ring and ring, but I refused to answer. He then texted me a dot with no other words. My mom had just got home and she asked me why I was sweating so much. I replied that I was playing basketball with my friend and I just gotten home. I turned my phone on silent as I didn't want my mom to question the calls I kept receiving. I immediately taken off my Craigslist ad, and I figured selling the damn iPad wasn't worth risking my life. Till this day, I only heard from that guy again just once. He hadn't told me he was on his way, and then said he had the wrong number. I was sure he was just messing with my head. I blocked his number and haven't heard from him since. I am in the business of buying and selling flip phones between Craigslist and eBay. I had been doing it about 2 years before I came across this experience. It was about 4 p.m. on a Thursday. I had just got off work and I felt like I wanted to browse around Craigslist. I lived in Inglewood, so trying to find deals was not a hard task. I saw an ad saying iPhone 4S for sale, cheap price, buy quick. The phone was only $150. The only issues were that the phone had small scratches. I dropped my jaw and immediately saw dollar signs bouncing on my desk. I scanned the post for a number only to realize the only way I could contact them was by email. I emailed them as quickly as I could, as I knew many other people would try to obtain a low-priced iPhone. 5 minutes later, I received a response saying the iPhone that was in the picture was already sold, but he had just gotten another iPhone shipped to him that he could sell me for the same price, only it was a different color. He had given me his cell phone number and agreed to meet at a gas station I knew of that was close to a police station. However, he had told me to meet him at 7 p.m. and that had to be a quick meet as he had somewhere to be. At this time of the year, it gets dark real early, but hell, people are always at the gas station. I had gotten to the gas station at around 6:58 p.m. and saw a guy across the street on a bike. It was a scrawny African American guy who had a big backpack hanging off his shoulder and a nervous look. He had begun to ride closer and closer to where I was and gave me a nod as if he was trying to make sure he had the right guy. I asked him if he had the iPhone as I tucked my hands in my pocket. He was sweating as if he had just gotten back from playing basketball. He then reached in his backpack and I took a small peek as he swung his backpack towards his chest. I could hear metal clinking as if he had a couple phones in his backpack, or if it was something else. He then asked me if everything was cool. I just nodded. He then pulled out the phone and I could already see a big scratch on the back that wasn't told beforehand. "Hey man, what's up with that scratch?" I told him. I told him I would not pay for a phone that had such a scratch on it and that it didn't match the description he told me. He agreed to knock down the price another $20. I mean, come on now, it's just a scratch, right? He then showed me it worked and didn't have any problems. I gave him the money quick and drove off as I saw the cops pulling up to the gas station. The guy then rode off away as I could see him in my rearview mirror. He was pedaling pretty damn quickly around the corner. I saw police lights flashing towards me. My heart dropped as I pulled over to the curb. The cops had passed my car without even slowing down. I felt as if I had just did a drug deal, even though it was just buying a used phone. I looked at the phone as I stopped at a traffic light nearby and I noticed it was on airplane mode. I had taken it off airplane mode as the light had turned green just to make sure it had no problems. Out of nowhere, it began to ring as soon as I turned the airplane mode off. I ignored it the first time, then another ring followed, and then another ring. I was wondering who it could have been. It was a 323 number, so I was sure it wasn't a business call. I thought it may have been best to just text back once I got home. I'm not very good at talking and driving at nighttime. I was confused as to why I was even receiving calls, so I was sure the guy should have deactivated the phone service. I figured he had made a rookie mistake as he didn't really look experienced at meeting people on Craigslist, or selling phones for that matter. I turned the phone's ringer to silent as the rings began to make me more anxious. 10 long minutes later, I was home. I had glanced at the phone while my heart was racing, only to see there were about 50 missed calls on the phone screen from about 5 different numbers. I switched over to the voicemail menu to find about 20 voicemails, all ranging between 2 seconds to 1 minute. I then saw a text that would make me almost faint. It said, I know where you live. It freaked the hell out of me as soon as I saw the text. I had texted the number back, "Who is this?" Immediately my phone rang when I saw the text was read. I was freaking out as the phone rang, thinking the Craigslist guy may have done something that would lead up to me. I answered the phone. "Hello?" The guy shouted, "You took my daughter's phone. I'm going to kill you. I'm on the way." And I said, "Hold on, sir. I didn't take your phone. I had bought." He then cut me off saying, "I don't give a damn. I am outside." I peeked my eye out the window to saw a huge guy who looked like a bodyguard fiercely running towards my door. I ran to my room in the back so I can get away from the door. I then called the police. Loud thumps echoed throughout the apartment as I began to talk to the operator. They told me to stay put in the house as the loud bangs were noticeable. I had received a text on my personal phone from the neighbors, and they were telling me how this guy was just banging on my door, and if he wasn't going to stop, they would call the police. I told them not to go outside and that I had already called. The noise stopped when I hung up, and I didn't see the guy when I went to the door. I ran to the phone only to see a text saying, "Don't sleep tonight." The police arrived and I explained everything that happened. They had told me that the same boy that sold me this phone was reported by another lady who claimed to be the owner. She was robbed at gunpoint a few blocks from the gas station I met the boy. The lady had came in a bucket car, excited she would see her phone in my hand. I asked her if her dad was still mad, and she asked me, "What dad?" I then said, "You don't have a dad? He came knocking on my door." And she said her father had died years before. I felt my heart drop as I found out the guy who was banging on my door wasn't her dad. I told her and the police about the guy, and they suggested I stay away from the apartment for a little while, and that she turned the location services off. I also showed her calls the phone had, and somehow all the calls I saw had disappeared, along with the voicemails. She claimed her phone had issues that would need to be fixed. I was in shock that almost 30 calls would just disappear like that. I decided I stayed at a friend's house for a week, as I used Craigslist to find a new apartment. This time was the last time I would flip a phone. I've decided to move to my parents' house in Lancaster, and decided this will be my new start. Still to this day, I don't know who the guy was and haven't even bothered to find out if the boy got caught. Just be careful who you meet on Craigslist, and please don't buy any used phones without checking it thoroughly. I decided to rent out my son's room once he left for college in another state. I made a Craigslist listing for college students only because I figured students wouldn't be such a hassle to live with. Sure enough, I began receiving emails and calls regarding the room. I had emailed about 5 students back my address and told them to come by the next day at separate times. The first 4 students that came by all had the same response, saying they couldn't afford the price, but the room was real nice. The last student told me the fit was perfect. She was a very tall, blonde chick and had huge glasses almost covering half her face. She had told me she was an honor roll student and didn't have much of a social life, and she also loved to play computer games. Her name was Lisa. She had also told me how she didn't want to live with her friend because they had horrible living conditions that would affect her studies. I had told her she can move in for free for the rest of the month and begin paying after. She accepted and decided Monday afternoon would be a great time to move in. Come Monday, I could hear the doorbell with Lisa holding her bags. I was surprised she didn't really have much to bring, but then again, I remember her telling me she lived at a friend's house. Lisa didn't really seem the same when I saw her that day. She seemed rather dark and a bit more quiet. I had showed her more around the house and told her she was invited for dinner tonight. My husband met her when he came home from work that afternoon. I could hear them talking through the door. He would ask her what school she went to. She then responded that she was a student at Hardin University. It was a school I'd never heard of before. I remember her telling me she was an honor student, but damn, it dawned on me. I didn't even ask her what school she went to. I took my ear off the door and laid in the bed. I began watching my favorite show, Breaking Bad, as my husband began cooking. He was making my favorite dinner, spaghetti and meatballs. I told myself I should go in the kitchen and help, but I was so tired. I had never felt so tired. I finally mustered up and walked to the kitchen. I told my husband, Ron, "Did you forget the onions this time?" He gave me a confused stare as if he didn't hear me. I said, "Did you forget the onions this time?" He said, "Oh shit, I'm sorry, honey." Just kidding. I hated Ron's sense of humor. He often makes me mad and then makes a joke of it. I decided to check on Lisa, who had her door closed as I walked upstairs. I began knocking and she opened the door a split second, almost as if she was expecting it. This kind of weirded me out. I told her the food was ready and she said she would be right down. I went to the bathroom right next to the room and could hear her shuffling through her things. By now you can probably tell I'm a pretty nosy person. We both met in the hallway and I insisted she walk down the stairs before me. I could see in a painting covered with plastic on the stairs directly from my room, a reflection of a dark shadow speeding across the room. I didn't say anything since I would just tell myself it was a shadow of a bird flying outside her window. We then began to eat and I asked her what she majored in. She replied saying she was studying biology. I thought to myself, how the hell could you have been studying this type of major over the internet? But I guess that's technology these days. I heard a honking noise outside and saw some weird multicolored car. It was parked right in the sidewalk in front of our house. It stayed there about 10 minutes and drove off. I was weirded out by this, but I thought nothing of it as it could have been somebody waiting for someone else. But the next few days passed and I noticed something rather odd. I noticed she hasn't left the house not once. She seemed too young not to have any type of social life. One night, the last night, I remember waking up at around 3 a.m. to get something to drink. I walked into the hallway only to hear weird noises from her room. I didn't want to knock as I thought it would be rude, but I couldn't resist after I started hearing even more. I knocked on the door, but no answer. I knocked again, still no answer. I wondered what the hell could have been going on in there. I heard a loud ticking noise out of nowhere. I started sweating and ran downstairs as I heard the pots moving and banging against each other. The lights began switching on and off and I could hear a scream coming from Lisa's door. I immediately ran upstairs. My husband banged on the door as if he was locked in. I tried to open the door as I looked back at her door. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. Ron began kicking the door as he screamed, asking what the hell was going on. I grabbed a baseball bat and headed towards the door, but I couldn't hit it hard enough. I had swing, and I tried to hit the doorknob off as I saw it was still locked. I started hitting Lisa's door, and I forgot I didn't even attempt to open it before. I slowly opened the door, and then I saw Lisa with a dead stare as the glasses were broken on her face. I then saw a board game in front of her that had letters and numbers all over it. Her hand was shaking as she was pale as snow. I was so freaked out. I ran outside and started screaming. I could hear Ron tapping on the window and looking at me with the most frightened look ever. I can just see his mouth open and as if he was screaming, but I can barely hear it. I looked at the window to the left side of the house where Lisa's room was, and I could just see her face staring right at me. Out of nowhere, she began to smile. I will never forget the smile she gave me. I mean, who the hell can smile in a situation like this? I mean, it was such a fucked up time. I called the cops and they came and raided the home. Lisa was on the floor knocked out as they came in and tried to wake her up. She went to the hospital immediately following the incident. They had to saw around the door hinge to free my husband Ron from the room. I couldn't believe all this shit has happened. Apparently Lisa had a Ouija board, according to the cops. We didn't sleep all night as we heard footsteps and strange things going on around the house, including the pots and the lights. I looked in Lisa's room and looked at her browser history. She had some program that had an onion icon, only to find out later she was using the dark web, or some people may call it the deep web. When I clicked the program, I could see her webcam light flashing lights and a video of myself on the screen. I figured she may have been taking some selfies before, but then I saw a chat box on the right side popping up messages saying, "I see you," And where did the nice girl go? I tried to exit off the screen, but I couldn't. I then saw what made my jaw drop even more. I saw another message with my address in it. What's scary was that I couldn't even see who was typing it. I covered my hand on the webcam trying to figure out who it was. I looked closer at the screen, but I couldn't even see a name or any type of user. I looked at the title of the page before I unplugged the computer, and it said a Ouija board experiment plus hot white chick video. Watch now. I was in shock. The next day I had a priest come bless the house. I also told the cops about the weird site I saw on my computer. They told me never to turn that computer on again. Lisa had returned to get her stuff while I was back watering my flowers. Before I could say bye, she was already gone. After this, I never trusted another person to live in my house. Not even my son wanted to come back to the room. I still look outside my house hoping not to see the same car I saw before, as I was sure the website I saw could have had something to do with it. All I could say is, be careful who you meet off Craigslist.